24 minutes past the hour. Top of the morning to you. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. We stream the show at millerandmoulton.com, and we broadcast it live everywhere around the world on twitch.tv/Miller and Moulton. He is Pat Kirwan. He talks NFL for a living. Weekday afternoons with his co-host Jim Miller, moving the chains on NFL radio. He's also a part of the CBS's NFL Today show. You can follow Pat on Twitter at @PatKirwan_NFL. And by now, you know when Pat joins us on Tuesdays and Fridays, he does so courtesy of Pinchers from Tampa to Key West and many points in between with 8 locations in Southwest Florida. Pinchers, because you can't fake fresh. Pat, another Monday night doubleheader. How are you?
I'm loving these doubleheaders. And, Mark and I were just discussing there's some real value to that 5 o'clock game. It does cut my show short, which I don't really like to do. But I enjoyed the game. I just can't imagine watching it in California at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Something tells me that didn't work real well out there.
I'm sure that wasn't much for those folks. I know there were lots of people in these parts that were telling their bosses that they were sick, that there were problems with the kids so that they could leave and get home. A lot of Bills fans that are probably disappointed. So I want to start with their quarterback. He was very pedestrian last night, just a little above 50% completion percentage. That's 2 games in a row where it's not been good. Pat, has Josh Allen regressed? Have teams figured out some things? Is it a combination of both?
Yeah, I think, first off, he's not a finished product. We're all excited about the step he took this year off of last year. And I think, you're going to always step back once and go forward twice. I would say at the end of the day, there's not one person in Buffalo organization that thinks he's regressed. I think he's had a bad game. You're allowed to have those. Plenty of guys have them, especially when you're in the developmental stage of your career. And there's a lot of pressure that the Chiefs can put on you. And when you can't stop the run and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is running down your throat all day, that changes the role of the quarterback of the opposing team. You now have to start playing a different level of football. He'll be fine. I still think they're going to the playoffs, and I wouldn't be panicking about him. I think there's other guys I'd be worried about, but not him.
Pat, Sean McDermott did something yesterday. 1, you don't normally see. 2, you very rarely see on a team that's 4-1 and in first place. He benched 2 defensive starters. They were not on the injury report at any point in time during the week. And he didn't just bench them. He deactivated them. I mean, the Chiefs are coming to town. Mahomes and company. 2 defensive starters. And I don't know of many coaches, Belichick obviously would do it, but there are very few coaches that would use the Chiefs game as the game to make the point with individual players, if not your team, that, hey, your last performance or so has not been good enough. We need to pick this up. I thought what he did was fascinating, and sometimes it can backfire. All right. Are you at all worried about what McDermott did yesterday?
Well, he knows that the tail can't wag the dog. And if you're not going to live up to the standards they all agreed to. One thing about Sean, when you're up there, Sean makes he starts camp off with every player stands up by themselves in front of the team and coaches and kind of basically says why they love football and what they're going to do to be the best player they can be. And if he feels like you're not doing that, he is not going to do anything but make you live up to your words. So I think he's trying to build something that's going to last a long time. I don't think Sean will look at any single game and say, I should prostitute my values or the values you guys said you want me to have as your coach. He's a very strong leader, and they like that they all made a commitment. So if there's something going on where there's production in game tape or production on the practice field or late for something or whatever, Sean is thinking, look, I got Josh Allen for 10 to 12 years. And this thing is, I'd like to beat the Chiefs. I'd like to win the division. I'd like to win a Super Bowl. But I also know if I let any of this rot get into the middle of my formula, it could cause long-term problems. And he's a tough guy. He was a wrestler. He understands. And he's really doing nothing more than what the players asked him to do. So if he does those kind of things, I've seen other coaches do it. I know I shouldn't even mention their name. I know 2 coaches that regret they didn't do it. And I'll never forget one player. And I kept saying, we should just not bring this guy. He can't wait. He can't wait to do something negative. And he had an interception in a game. It was late in the season. And after the interception, he went over and sat down. And he knew the interception was giving him a gigantic incentive that he was working towards. And he said, hey, I just got my 8th interception. I'm done for the day. It was the first quarter. He was a real turd. And I'm not calling those guys up in Buffalo that, but we didn't do anything to him. And the others saw that. And over time, the frustration that they had because of what was going on permeated the whole team. So I get what Sean's doing. Hard to do. Your point's well taken, David. Hard to do. And it is professional sports. You can always hide behind the label of professional sports. It's not sport. It's entertainment. Just put the best guys out there. Don't worry about all the morals. Don't worry about the commitment. Certainly don't worry about being a team. Just take your rentals and put them out there and see if you can win this game. And I know Sean well enough that he ain't doing that.
Pat, last week, I always ask you about your AP power poll because, one, I have fun watching you get a little worked up over something that's so insignificant. But last week, you simply said you were going to put Pittsburgh at 1. I would think you got to give them strong consideration for 1 now, with one exception. As good as that game was, and Mike Tomlin said, welcome to varsity ball. They played varsity ball against Cleveland, but they lost Bush. Just how key is this? They got through the last game. The backup came in, played his tail off, but we all know what Bush means to that defense, and that defense is elite, Pat. What does Pittsburgh do going forward? Do they have to make a trade? They're not afraid. They did a year ago. What do you do to fill that hole on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, first off, Kevin Colbert remembers vividly what happened when they lost Shazier. And Kevin said to me a year later, he said, I underestimated the loss of Shazier. I knew it was one of our best players, but I thought we could work around it because we had so many good players. And they said, I'm not going to let that happen again, a la drafting of Devin. So what will he do this time? Kevin's a pretty smart guy. I think they're going to try like crazy to find one that they can trade for, which leads me to the funny story of Steve McClendon. Like, can you imagine walking into the Jet locker room? No, here we go again. And them saying, we just traded you to Tampa. No problem. I'll rent a car. I'm out of here.
Right.
Someone is going to be happy to get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think they'll trade. Now, they don't ever have a lot of cap space, but I think they know they have a Super Bowl bound team. And I think they'll make whatever it takes to find one. And it doesn't have to be the greatest player, but it has to be a good player, a starter. And I think if by Friday, if we comb these rosters, let's go to the teams that aren't playing very well and maybe looking for draft picks. And I think we could find a linebacker, and I think Kevin Colbert will find one.
Pat, you said 2 years ago, and, we all know by now, you and Pete Carroll go back a long ways, and that you two were talking, and Pete had made the determination before the 2018 season, I think I'm going to play a little smash mouth football because all the defenses are getting smaller and quicker, and I don't think they can stand up to the run. And I'll be patient enough, and we'll run the ball. And sure enough, they were. And that began Seattle's comeback to the upper echelon of the NFL. Well, last night, Pat, I had that in the back of my mind as I watched Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs and then Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals, 2 of the top 4 pass-happy guys in the league, run the ball combined for 506 yards in their 2 road wins last night. Has it gotten to the point now where even the pass-happy guys are like, I don't know what to tell you. All the D linemen are 250 pounds. We're just going to run it down their throat.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity to be a good running team. We haven't even gotten to Derrick Henry yet. But you're right. The other thing I said last week on this show was now you have your first 4-game computer breakdown of who these guys really are. No one knew in September what they were up against. They were guessing. But then we start putting everything in and start looking at those cut-ups. And, all right, let me see the cut-ups on first down run. whoa, there's opportunity here. So Andy, he's still, I think Andy, when he looks at anything, sees a pass answer to everything. But rainy night, tremendous running back that he drafted, goes and gets Le'Veon to make this a pretty good stable going starting this week. I think the scatter report, the talent of his running back, and how people. I'll tell you what impressed me the most about all that. Forget weather conditions and forget computer reports. He didn't have Sammy Watkins, and I'm thinking, okay, Sammy has been the answer to people doubling Hill and handling, bracketing off Kelsey and in the red zone and all that. And then he saw it happening. And sometimes it's your line coach. You know this, David and Mark. The line coach comes to him on Wednesday and says, look, we can block this defense. They are not what you think they are. And then the line coach brings in the tape and says, look at these first down runs. And when you start looking at it, you start realizing here's 4 running plays that we like using, and all 4 are going to work against this front. And I think sometimes your line coach has to sell that in. The line coaches that I've known that are with reputations of being great line coaches always had the ability to go to the head coach and go, now's the time, and here's the plays. And if you can sell it in, they do it. And the Kingsbury one, I don't know him that well, but I guarantee you, when you look at Dallas's defense, what don't you like? Everything looks like it's going to work, and I don't know how Mike Nolan is still working. I feel bad for Mike. He's a good man, but between Mike Nolan and I'll ask you two guys, this is a really weird question. If you were Adam Gase, would you have fired Greg Williams?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the power to do so, though, or I think he already would have, Pat.
Pretty sure he has the power over his staff. And
well, he was told to keep Williams when he got the job, though.
Yeah, I know. But usually if you look at the fine print in that head coach's contract, he had managed the staff. And I bet you, well, I don't know that he would, but I would have.
You brought up Derrick Henry. I want to bring up that game. Crennel had an opportunity to go up by 8 points. And Pat, I don't give a crap what the analytics say. I really don't. I thought it was stupid in the time. I thought it was, every time I see it, I think it's ignorant. I mean, Belichick did it at one point. Pat, help me out here. When did the computer geek decide that we have to go up by 9 as opposed to make a team drive the length of the field, score a touchdown, which is already pretty damn hard, and then have to get a 2-point conversion, which is arguably the hardest conversion in football right now? I don't get it. They come down, they score the touchdown, they kick extra point, they go to overtime, and then Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, and the Texans season's over. Over with that drive. I don't get it. Help me, Pat.
No, I can't help you. Romeo, I thought, made a mistake. What makes it worse, Mark? Romeo said he'd do it again. That remains to be seen, but he said it, so this morning you're still digesting the anger of what you thought was a dumb move. And then you hear the coach say, well, next time I'm in this position, I'll do it again. There's another psychological problem when you go for it to get to 9 and you don't make it. Now, instead of kicking the extra point, going up 8, rallying your kickoff team, you got a bunch of guys that are going, uh-oh, what just happened? You drove a negative thought into their heads, in my opinion. So yeah, the analytics thing, I'm not going to blame analytics for every coach mistake. That's not right. And we don't even know if it was analytics that caused him to make that decision. He might have said, my defense is gassed. This has nothing to do with analytics. I can't play any, and he knows defense. We can't stop anything anymore. And maybe we just have to do this to try to protect my group, because I don't think we're going to stop them from going down the field. Now, I'm just putting that out there in conjecture, but I don't think every wacky decision, especially 2-point plays and going for it on 4th, are always analytics. I think the gut of some coaches is, I'll never forget the Super Bowl and Romeo, I believe, was on the sidelines. When they beat the Rams, the greatest show on turf, I've said this on your show before, I was down on the sideline. And you know what I heard? I heard them say, and John Madden was upstairs saying something different, but I heard a coach tell Belichick, go for it now. We're done. We have nothing left to stop the Rams. So after the game, I grabbed that coach and I said, did I hear you say that? He goes, yeah. I was warning him. We got nothing left. We're out of stuff that's going to work. If we're going to win this game, win it now. So sometimes a coach will come up to the head guy and go, hey, if I were you, I'd get to nine if you can, because we can't stop them.
Yep. Summerall and Madden's last broadcast together, and Madden said, hey, if I'm the Patriots, I'd play for overtime here. And the first play worked, and Charlie Weiss and company took it from there. He's Pat Kirwan. He talks NFL on a regular basis. After all, he co-hosts Moving the Chains weekday afternoons on NFL Radio, and he joins us once again courtesy of Pinchers. Okay, Bucks or Packers? Are you taking more out of Sunday's game for which team and why? And I just throw this out there about Green Bay. They played a Monday night game last year in Frisco and had the exact same thing happen to them. They lost 37-8, and the game wasn't that close. And they rattled off 6 in a row until they played the Niners again and then got whooped again. So it's funny that Monday night showed us, well, they don't have anything for San Francisco, but against everybody else, they'll be just fine. So now what do you take away from the game from either Tampa or Green Bay's perspective?
Well, when you have Rodgers, I thought I saw him talking to the head coach at a point in the game when it was pointless to keep, doing what they do. Let's just get out of Dodge and go back and regroup. So I do think there's a history there. And I think with Rodgers, you can become the team that can win a bunch of games and maybe have to play these guys again. On the other side of the coin, we all know that Tampa's a good defense, but we all prefaced that last week with, Vita Vea is gone. Okay, so they go in and get McClendon to patch a hole. That's kind of what Mark thinks and the Steelers will do at linebacker. I agree with that. But what I saw, Sue especially, physically dominating up front. Now, we used to describe Sue, and probably still should. He plays for the postseason, plays hard, gets another one-year contract somewhere, and but he was playing like that was postseason. I thought his physical dominance actually helped the rest of the defense do a lot of things up front. And so I was encouraged by that. Their linebackers in Tampa can stay on the field. They don't really have to go to nickel if they don't want to. Those linebackers there's nothing you can do to them formationally that they can't line up to. That's probably the most important thing I'll say about them. So it's 1st and 10, you send your base defense out and they go to empty. So what? Those linebackers can line up with everybody. So they have that flexibility. They have power up front. And Brady and company, the offense wasn't featuring the two wideouts, the great wideouts. It was featuring the running back and the tight ends. That's old Brady stuff. So plenty of flexibility there. I'm not going to get goofy with them because they still got to figure out how to beat the Saints. We'll see if they do that. But, yeah, I like them. I've moved them way up. And where do I have them? I have them 6th this week. So I could move them higher. I'm more intrigued by where do you place the Chicago Bears? We suppressed their record. Like, they got a good record, but they were hovering around 10. I finally acknowledged them, made them number 7 this week, ahead of Green Bay.
I'm glad you answered that, Pat, because I always have 2 things in front of me on Tuesday. I always try to have the standings close by so I don't mess up, and then the scores just to see what's going on. And as you're answering that, I am staring at the Bears' 5-1 record, wanting to ask you the question, when are we going to take this team seriously? Because I still don't. Tampa should have beat them. Detroit should have beat them. Everybody should have beat them. But you know what, Pat? All we care about in the NFL is their record, and they are 5-1.
And their defense is I don't say this about many teams. Their defense can win a game. Now, if you ask that question of the whole league, Pittsburgh defense could win a game. Baltimore, I think the defense could win a game. And then there's Chicago, or maybe Tampa. But we're starting to see at the top of this thing, as I have to at least produce my opinion, solid defenses are showing up. And I do think, as I said last week, that has a lot to do with the defenses getting those scouting reports finally and now building a defensive package for the opponent they play. I know David will agree with me on this. Kansas City can turn around next week and run the ball 6 times. They're going to be game plan oriented all the time.
I will say the Chiefs have been better defensively outside of the Raiders game than we saw them last year, though. In a way, they seem even more well-rounded this year than they were a year ago. Pat, time to get concerned about the Patriots. The Patriots have gotten off to slow starts before. They've been 1-2, 2-2. But it seems as if the league is catching up to the way it is the Patriots wanted to revamp their offense. It almost seems as if that offense needs a plan B. Are you at all concerned? Or, hey, tip of the hat to Denver. Vic can coach defense, and they were motivated for that game. We knew they would be. They were motivated for that game, and boy, did they play like it.
Well, I think if you sit back and think of, first off, I thought Cam looked rusty and out of touch with doing what he had been doing fairly well earlier in the year, and he's been away from it. They didn't practice very much. Bill is a scheme defense and a scheme offense, and his game plans are, and we all know this, they're absolutely odd and different every week. And he could be a 4-3 defense today, a 3-4 next week. He could be in a 2-back set. Next week, he's an empty. So there's a guy and a team that has to practice. They really have to go out and have him explain, okay, because he's got very interesting, quirky stuff. Okay, this week, you're going to take the contain. You're never going to rush. Sell like you're rushing, but never rush. And set up my blitzer. So he's got all this stuff he does, and he's really game plan oriented every week. So when I see a team like that not practice, I think that's problem number one. Problem number two, which is probably really problem number one, is how many guys are MIA now? You go back to the beginning. They lost a bunch of guys in free agency, good players. They're all over the league. They're in Miami. They're in Detroit, etc. Then he has a record number of opt-outs. Now he has COVID guys all over the place. And you start thinking about Sony Michel. Yeah, they replaced him for the time being. Mason, even guys who play special teams like Rivers. When you count up, and this is not an excuse, just the reality, when you count up the starters missing from last year's roster, it's over 11. And I'll leave it at that so we don't have to debate one or two of the gray area guys that we'd call situational, but they play 60% of the time. So when I hear guys say to me, Patrick Chung, no big deal. They got a nice rookie. Yeah, they got a rookie. Patrick Chung was a veteran, knew what he was doing. That's just an example. So maybe it's all, and I'll tell you what, Mark, you know where I got him in this week? 18th.
Wow.
Maybe that's my opinion.
Well, right now it seems about right that they're just a middle third team. Pat, between now and Friday when we talk to you, you always dig into things other than just who's going to win and lose. What is it you're looking for this week in the NFL that you're trying to figure out some trends or some tendencies as we're at about the 1/3 poll?
Well, I'm going to, a couple things. First off, I did a piece yesterday for Moving the Chains on Derrick Henry, just to draw attention to everything, not just the obvious, but everything about that guy. So I am concerned and excited for him all in the same breath. So I will be going back to look at who can keep up this pace. I've warned people before about the history of Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes. Can this guy keep doing this? If you go back and just take last year's playoff games and this year and add them together, you got a bad number now. You got a guy that's averaging 28 touches a game. 28 touches a game. And he's got 1,139 yards, 142 scrimmage yards a game. Can he keep the pace up? So I'm going to go look at that and see, can they keep doing this? When I hear a coach say, yeah, we rode on Derrick's back. Yeah, sure did. How long can Derrick carry you? Is Tannehill good enough to go forward with? And then I like to check in on the quarterbacks. Are there any I just asked the question, then I'll go try to answer it. Are there any quarterbacks I should bench right now? I'll probably ask you guys that on Friday.
He's Pat Kirwan. He is co-hosting Moving the Chains with Jim Miller every weekday afternoons on NFL Radio. He's also part of CBS's NFL Today. He joins us Tuesdays and Fridays. Courtesy of Pinchers, from Tampa to Key West and many points in between. Pinchers, because you can't fake fresh. Pat, we will chew on that question that you left us with, and we will have an answer for you on Friday.
You probably have an answer now, David. Just hold it. That's a tease, folks, in the world of radio.
Thanks,
Look
Pat.
at you.
See you guys.